Welcome to After Dark at the Fixed Ops Roundtable, featuring Cara and Ted Ings. This episode is brought to you by BG Products, partners beyond products. And now for your hosts, Ted Ings and Cara.
I get to interview the master of all fixed ops and interviewers, Mr. Ted Ings. And Sarah, come on up. Please, come on up. Are you worried? Don't be worried. Fantastic, thanks. So it was interesting is that as Ted has done for us, and Ted and I, well, let's just start with Ted. Ted and I we introduced ourselves back with John Anderson. And he came in to do a service training, which he was all about the walk around of the car and in the service drive training, which really worked out well. And that's how we started a relationship. What year was that?
I met Tully in 2005 or 2006. So I had a phone call from a dealer in San Jose. He was a client of mine, John Anderson, who many of you probably know, and Courtesy Chevrolet. And he said, I hired a new service director, and I'd like you to come out and spend some time with him. And I asked him some questions. And he said, the big issue is that this new service director is quite introverted. And I want to see if you can get him out of his shell. So I went out there, and John introduced me to Tully Williams. I met him for the first time. And this is a true story. It's a true story. Yeah. So I spent maybe a year or two or three with that dealership doing some training and seeing Tully maybe every other month. And then we lost contact until 2019. And we did our second Fixed Ops Roundtable in Los Angeles at the Beverly Hilton. I invited Tully to come out because I saw he was speaking at another event in Orlando that year. And I could not believe the person that Tully had become. I said, who is this guy? He is not the same person I met in 2005.
Yeah, it was a great story. And then, I think that looking back at, the fixed ops side, and what's really kind of cool to have, Ted and Cara here today is that they have a different perspective on fixed ops. We see it as a bubble of a dealership, right? We see it as what we think it's what's happening in Sacramento or whatever, right? And what's nice about Ted and Cara is that they're giving us, one, as a voice, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but two is that they get to see everything. So the real cool thing about this is that we get to ask them questions about what's happening out there in the fixed ops world, not just in Sacramento or not just at the Nilo company, but we get to ask them what's happening in the nation and worldwide. What's the new things? What's the duds? What's happening like that? So it's really kind of cool to see that. So I'm really excited to hear that. But first off, Ted, tell me, how did you get started? What got you in business in the best side of the business, the fixed side?
I have I have a training company. I was in retail for 10 years. And about 30 years ago, I started a training company on the variable side. And I had a phone call in late 2001, right after 9/11, from one of the manufacturers in Los Angeles. And they said, would you put together a service advisor training class? And at the time, we didn't have one. And they said, we called Joe Verdi, big name in sales, and Grant Cardone, and they won't do it. And so I said, well, I'll give it a shot, all right? And then I was telling Cara, the first market they sent me to was the San Antonio market, and I had to pilot some of their dealers there. And it became a big success over the next couple months. And we realized we had something, and that was the first real service training class with a walk around that we did. And then it just grew and grew and grew.
So what was the power of the walk around? I mean, I think yours was unique then, where everybody was trying to do that, ugly word, hours per hour and dollars per hour and rip and tear everybody's heads off. You were all about that walk around. What made you pick that?
It was something that was not being done and that was easily embraced by consumers, but there was a lot of resistance from service advisors and service managers, from doing that. I remember the Corvette customers, Tully told me, are going to be a little bit different here at Courtesy Chevrolet, and maybe you don't want to do the walk around, right, with those customers. I learned about them. But at the time, there was a new form that had just come out, that green, yellow, and red form called the multi-point inspection. Oh my God. And we were having trouble nationally getting technicians to complete that, or if you recall. This is like way back, before it was even electronic. So we used the walk around to help set that up, and the fact that a lot of dealerships didn't have a good service menu. And so we put all those ingredients together with an interactive greeting, with the customer was involved, looking at the tires and looking at the vehicle, walking around, lifting the hood. And Tully was very instrumental in that as well.
You know, the power of the inspection, I think, is great. You know, and when I got in the dealership world, the Les Silver really is the one that pioneered that for us. God bless Les Silver. But I think that, in the independent world, just before I went to work for John Anderson, I had this company called the Auto Clinic, and we were a repair facility, had 5 or 6 techs, and we had a bunch of tow trucks. But the power of the inspection was there. We had the home of the free inspection. I think that, was kind of getting that start of what's going to happen when we tell people about their car, not just what they asked for in the service drive. And I think the power of that, but really the power of that and the walk around, or actually what I think is greeting the customer at the car. We don't do a lot of walk arounds. We want to make sure we greet the customers at the car. And I think that is a crucial element. Plus we take pictures to protect ourselves, but it's where the customer is more friendly with. I think they're comfortable at the car level. And I think the power of the inspection and then the walk around was the home run. And Les Silver, God bless Les Silver, he came out with that electronic inspection, the first one that really got us into that level of electronic inspection, holding techs accountable, and then also showing the customer these great inspections. Because before, what did you do when you got the inspection? The line went straight down. There was no check marks. That took too long. Yeah, and then we didn't pay anybody to do it, right? So I think that the power of that has really changed the industry. So Ted, after that part there, what was your next step? I mean, you did that, and then you kind of vanished for a little bit.
Yeah, so I've had a training company for a long time in retail automotive, and about 11 years ago, I was diagnosed with leukemia, CLL leukemia, and I had been on the road, maybe 40, 45 weeks a year when I was coming out to you, and I had to come off the road, right, to go through some treatment. And so I couldn't do the same type of training that I was doing. And what I ended up doing was helping to start a company in healthcare with a friend of mine who had been in the car business, who worked with us during college breaks, and he went on to become a medical doctor. And I was asking him some advice, on the treatment that I was going through at the time. And he said, Teddy, a lot of the things that you do in retail automotive that you're telling me about in service can be applied to healthcare, that multi-point inspection. He goes, that'd be a real good idea for healthcare as well. And he goes, we're just coming now to this new point. We have iPads that have been out for a couple of years. He goes, if we came out, there's this thing called electronic health records that are coming out. If we could apply some of those principles from the car business to the medical business, could you help me do that? I said, yeah, that's a good idea. So anyway, we
did you get a walk around on that too?
We built a healthcare company using a lot of the principles, all the principles really, from the car business, and we applied it to the human body. All right. So I spent a couple of years doing that. All right. And then we grew that, and then we sold that company. And then I had a choice of what to do now, because I could leave the business and retire or come back. And I decided to come back into the car business. And one of the things I wanted to do, because I had a big office in New York with a nice boardroom, and I came back into the car business. I said, how can I use this boardroom? And I said, what if I call some of the people that I knew, some of my dealer clients, and have them come in and we do some kind of a fixed operations roundtable, right? And I actually procrastinated on that for a long time because I didn't think anybody would show up. And we did the first one, and we filled the office. It was in my conference room. And then Tully came to the second one in Los Angeles, and did a third and a fourth. And I said, wow, we have something here. People want to talk about fixed operations, right? Best ideas. And then in February, March of 2020, you all know what happened, right? The whole world changed, right? And we had a choice to put the event aside and wait this thing out, because it was only going to be, 14 days or 28 days, or go online. And so we took it online. We didn't know any better. We had never been online. We did a one-day event with 50 speakers, live. The whole thing was live. You were involved in that. And then instead of 200 or 300 people, now we had 2,000 people, 3,000 people coming.
Let me comment on that. Yeah. So here's the thing about this online presence that Ted has done a master job at, is that when we went to events before to speak at, or just go to as an attendees. So let's say that there was 300 people there. Is that a good number?
Oh, yeah.
That's a really good number. So let me ask you this. We all paid $500 for 1,000, or maybe we got it comped in there. But when you look at the people in the audience, how many people were vendors? Over half. And most of the time it's 75%. So what happens at these events that they're having, they still happens today, is that these events are full of vendors that are just talking about their stuff to each other. And that's not a win. So what Ted has done and Cara is really exploded out is that now we have been able to hear stories from people like you, right? Like I have talked on there, too much, right? But the whole thing is that we're getting people at stores to talk about their stories, and guess who's listening to them? People like yourself, because you can click it on there and listen to it in the background. Now it's 4 days. 4 days is a long time. But how many times has sales had meetings like this? Hourly, right? We have the opportunity to actually listen to these great things. So Ted, I think going online was, I hate to say COVID was a good thing, but it was good for you to bring out this great avenue for us to learn more about fixed ops.
Yeah, and we took it online. It was a 1-day event, and then we started giving them themes, and we had a lot of, in New York, you had to be an essential business to be open, in March, April, May of 2020, and a lot of these great dealers, could not open their sales department, even in the parts of California as well. I remember dealers calling me up, so they all came to the Fixed Ops Roundtable to see what was happening, and then I decided we're gonna have to keep this virtual for a while. So I said, how are we going to get people to come to this event? And I was looking on social media, on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I found there was a dealership down in Texas that had this young lady, and she was apparently their marketing manager in social media, and they were open. They were out in the middle of Texas, middle of nowhere, and she was calling people in to come buy cars from them, and they would ship the car anywhere in the country. And they were open where other dealers were closed. And I looked at that. I remember calling you and I said, that's her. That's the girl we need to help bring people into the Fixed Ops Roundtable and enter Cara Delane.
It is really interesting to see that what makes great marketing on social media. I don't think it's posts. And I'll let you comment on this. It's the short videos. So I'm gonna let her say this incredible number because I'll go crazy. But you need to find out what she has done for Ted and how many views he gets on LinkedIn alone, what she has done with videos and how she created that, and then how many LinkedIn views she gets this month. So give us a little talk about how that works.
Yeah, so I was at an automotive conference one time, and it was before I met Ted, and I heard somebody say, we were talking about marketing, and they said, we've all heard the term, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And then they stopped for a second and said, now what is a video worth? And that rang home to me because a video is so much more engaging. We can all post pictures, and what I see is, a technician in the shop, stock photo of a vehicle that a salesperson put online, whatever it may be, but I felt like the automotive industry was so far behind when it came to advertising and marketing. And so I was fresh out of college. I was working for this dealership group, and I was learning a lot about the variable side of things. And when Ted reached out to me, I found out shortly after that, not only was the variable side of things far behind when it comes to marketing and advertising, but Fixed Ops had no idea. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what are y'all doing? And is it just because I'm young and I know how to work my iPhone? Like, what is going on? And so I had a lot of fun at the dealership group prior, building their social media up, and I kind of saw a window of opportunity there, and I had never dreamed about being in automotive this long. But
so tell us that story. So where did it start and where did it end when you left? When it comes to views and leads and so forth with that?
At the dealership group I was with?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they had about, and it was in a town of 4,000 people. I worked for a big corporation, but the 3 dealerships I worked for were in a town of 4,000 people. And out in the middle of nowhere, about an hour north of Houston. And we had about 15,000 followers on our group website, or our group Facebook page, and not really any presence on any other social media platforms. And I was there for right under 4 years. And we grew what little marketing they had into 180,000 followers on their Facebook page alone. And that was just our group page. I had tons of followers. A lot of people at the dealership had followers. Then we jumped on TikTok, Instagram, all these other platforms. And just on Facebook alone, you know, we were not showing much return. And then shortly after that, you know, a year in, we're getting about 80 million views and engagements every year. So then we started tracking it down to per day, per week, per month, and we were comparing ourselves to big corporations like CarMax, AutoTrader, and they're just dropping major ad dollars because we can see through all the analytics and data that they're only posting twice a month. So how are they getting 1.2 million engagements per month if they're only posting twice? And I discovered shortly after that, they're dumping about $1 million in advertising per month on those 2 posts. And our dealership group, myself, my operating partner, I had a graphic designer, a producer, and a videographer by the time I left. And we were neck and neck with CarMax all organically. We weren't spending any money, and we were getting 1 million views per month.
Wow.
And competing with CarMax in a town of 4,000 people, tiny little dealerships, all domestic brands. You know, I wasn't talking about Ferraris or anything to get views. I'm talking about, you know, a Ram 1500 over here and my technicians that are out in the middle of the country. So it was a great experience. And, you know, coming from the ground up at a small dealership group like that was really rewarding to me. And I had no idea when I started working at a dealership that I would stay working there, because I had big dreams to become an attorney. And it sucked me in so much that I never even applied to law school, and I had great enough scores I could have got in. But that's how much I love this industry. And I've taken it one step further after I met Ted and got involved with so many wonderful people in the fixed ops side of things that I saw even more opportunity in this space. And I can't wait to see how much we grow the Fixed Ops Roundtable and just blow up fixed ops to be, you know, on the forefront and the front of the house, because I think it deserves that. It doesn't deserve to be in the shadows of the sales department and all the glamorous quote unquote stuff. Fixed ops is the backbone of the automotive industry, and that's what I'm here to showcase to everybody today.
Thank you very much. Wow. Is that incredible? Hey, did I tell you that Danilo started in the fixed ops department? I got to put that in and say. So Cara, when talking about blowing that up in the sales side, and you were doing some service things, but a lot of it was sales. So when you look at now with your connection with Ted, and tell us a little bit about how that's getting there, and then where you were with your LinkedIn views to where you are today by just doing the views that you're doing, you know, the LinkedIn videos with Ted.
Yeah. So I had been working for Ted for about 2.5 years part-time, and I was working for him, you know, before hours at a dealership and after hours at a dealership, and we all work at a dealership, so we know what hours those are. So Ted was getting work for me that was produced from about 7 p.m. to about midnight every night, or really early in the morning. So probably not my best, right? I'm tired, you know, I just woke up, whatever it may be. And so when I left that group and joined him full-time in March, we were looking at all the analytics on his profile, my profile, and our group Fixed Ops Roundtable page. And I'm obsessed with tracking the data, because that way I know what works and what doesn't. And Ted actually shared with me this week just how much his profile has grown so dramatically in just a few short months. And it went from about 100,000, not even. Originally you said like 40,000, and then he was excited to be right under the 200,000 mark, and now he's per month it's about 800,000 averagely on his LinkedIn page, and I was like, oh, why is that? And Tully said it earlier, it's the power of video. And I think that's what everything comes down to. Every dealership that I've been in that I've helped train, whether it's on the sales or service side, if you don't believe in video, you're gonna get left in the dust. And I think that's pretty hard facts when we look at our data with our social media, that video works. It's got to be engaging, it's got to be fun, and it's got to be real and genuine. My favorite thing when I started was, oh, I have to be perfect. And I did it yesterday, and y'all see the videos that I did. Don't judge me because I am not a technician. But, that bothers me. I'm like, oh, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. I don't know what I'm talking about, Tully. And I'm telling everybody in the shop, I'm like, I don't even know what this means. And that's what makes it great, because we're all human. We're all real. We all mess up. And if you do it perfectly every time, nobody's going to want to watch you anyways. If you stutter around, you're not like the person sitting next to you, it'll work every single time, because I've been doing it for the last 4 years now, and I've seen many other people grow in their video styles, and everybody's is different. So I'm anxious to see where all the techs take their videos next, Tully.
Correct. So, what's interesting to see is, think about the numbers there she talked about. She's in a town of 4,000 people with how many millions of views?
80 million.
80 million views. How much did that cost you?
$0.
$0 except for human capital. God bless America. And then when we look at LinkedIn, now I don't know if LinkedIn is where we're going to sell all of our cars or fix all of our cars from, right? But it is a spot where a lot of our customers are on. I think our demographics for our brand, I bet you a lot of people are actually on there. Are you on there, Jared? So the issue is that this is a good place to be. So here's an example of someone doing great videos, and they're not generic, and then they blow the world up by doing great videos that are different. And that's really exciting for me to see. And that's where I think that we can learn so much from you on the tech video, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So that story there. So Ted, how did you find her?
As I said, during the early days of COVID, here was Cara out at the dealership group in Texas, calling consumers in to come buy the car from them online, and they would ship it out. And I connected with Cara, and I said, we have an event called the Fixed Ops Roundtable. And Tully, I'm not sure she knew what fixed ops meant at that time.
I responded and I said, okay, I'll talk to you. And then I ran to my managers and I said, this random guy in fixed ops, I don't even know what fixed ops is. I don't know why he wants me, but I must really have something, because I have convinced this man that I know everything about the automotive industry. So my advertising is working.
Yeah, and that's how it started. And then Cara worked for us part-time. And I think the first event I think was in the fall of 2020. And then she did 1 or 2 videos for us. And then it grew the next event and the next event. And we started doing these themes. And we had gone from Back to the Future to The Greatest Show. There was a theme we did in December of 2020 for the Fixed Ops Roundtable. We called it the Jumanji event, because 2020 was like a Jumanji year, right? And we made the whole event like a board game where everybody would get sucked into the game. And Cara then came in theme, and I saw this newly found talent in her, where she was now, was it Ruby Roundhouse? Okay. I think you were dressed up as. And then as we got into early 2021, I don't know if you all remember, but that big show that occurs every year in January, February, usually in Las Vegas or New Orleans, that show that year had to go virtual. Do you remember? You know which one I'm talking about, the big dealer show. And they did not have the experience on the virtual side. And now we had like 5 or 6 events under our belt, and they were going to go virtual for the dealers. And I said to Cara, and I said to Tully, we're going to go virtual at the same time. I wonder if we could compete with them. And we were raising some money for charity at the time, okay? And one of our sponsors sold a cleaning equipment, like a Zamboni type equipment, where they cleaned the service department floor, and they had sold one to Jay Leno. And Jay had given us some tickets for an earlier event for people to meet him before COVID at the Mirage backstage. So I said to the sponsor, I said, I wonder if we could get Jay Leno to speak at the Fixed Ops Roundtable. And he said, I don't know, but we'll give it a shot. And I remember it took a couple months, but they finally put me on the phone with Jay Leno in February of 2021. And I said, Jay, we have a big event for the automotive industry. And by the way, nobody was traveling all that much back then. I said, look, I know you're not out doing shows. You're probably home or at the Jay Leno's garage in Burbank. We're going to raise some money for charity. Would you speak? And they had put me on the phone. It was silent at the end. And I said, Jay, I remember when I was with a Ford dealer in the early 90s, I went to the dealer show and you were on stage and you said how you had worked as a lot attendant at a Ford dealer in Massachusetts, and how you had lost your job. And you told us the whole story. He goes, "You remember that story?" I go, "Yeah." I go, "Would you tell that on the Fixed Ops Roundtable to our audience?" And he said, "I'll do it." So now we had secured Jay Leno, and in February of 2021, we went live with the Fixed Ops Roundtable with a 3-day event up against that big automotive show. And I think they had 1,800 people at their event, but we had Jay Leno. We had 8,000 people come to the Fixed Ops Roundtable, and we had now become the biggest event in automotive, all right? And we did it all virtually. We did it with video. And that's when we realized how powerful this Fixed Ops thing was. And it's continued to grow and grow and grow. And that's kind of where we are today. And now these pop-up events give us a whole new element because we get to come and showcase you. You know, you're the stars of the show, so that other people around the industry can see really good dealer groups and see how they run.
Isn't that amazing that 8,000 people online? And I bet you when you look at 8,000, it's not 7,000 vendors. No, it's not. It is probably 7,000 people in fixed ops, from dealers down to detailers or orders or service writers in the background, because you don't need to watch it. You just need to listen to it, right? And if you listen to it like, oh, that's great, I'm going to watch that, or I'll rewatch it later. That's the power. So when I look at that, Ted, tell us out there, what do you feel the biggest thing is right now? What is the biggest thing or the biggest trend you're seeing? And I'll ask Cara.
I don't think there's one. I think you touched on it the last 2 days here. The culture of the dealership is now, you know, not just a cliche, it's a real thing. And, you know, they say, you know, how do we get good technicians? How do we acquire them? How do we grow them? It really starts at the top in your dealership with a culture that's set at the very beginning, all right? Culture is a big one. There's no one thing. The phones are a big issue, all right? Answering the phones these days for a lot of dealerships is a challenge. You know, maybe not here, but other parts of the country. Just answering the phone, getting someone to pick up the phone to make that service appointment. Remarketing, reconditioning is a very big issue. Our good friend Ed on the East Coast has a mobile service business where he has 10 mobile service vans that are out there running around with 2-person teams. We highlighted that last month at a pop-up. So all these ideas and best practices are what other dealerships want to know about. Maybe they won't all be able to implement them the way you can, but they want to hear about them, and they want to hear what's working from you, their peers. So I am surprised at the 4 events we do every year for the Fixed Ops Roundtable, how many new things continue to come out. And another big thing, Rick mentioned it as well, is women in retail automotive, all right? And I want Cara to talk about that a little bit, because, you know, there's a big focus on that, and it's a real thing. And, you know, to have younger people come in, and, you know, women in particular, is very important.
I just want to say before I pass it on, who's the #1 service advisor right now, year to date? A woman back there, Mrs. Dana, right there, $1.6 million tracking. So congratulations. But women are our superstars, as my good friend, Mrs. Chris Toll, is now the controller. Toll Nilo, is so you know how it works here. So the issue is that she's done a great job for us. The power of women in the I think in the industry is just getting started. Dana, please stand up. Say hello, everybody. Thank you, Dana. So I love that we're finally getting into that. Really, I'm sure we're not 100% there, but I see that traction going. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah. So I look at the automotive industry a little bit differently than most of you. I'm 25 and I am a woman. So that's kind of odd in this industry, but I will say my outlook is I don't see many hurdles in my near future. I don't see any hurdles in my far future, because I think by the time I stepped into automotive, so many things have happened before me that open the opportunities and these doors for somebody like me. But I do think the one thing that is lacking in this industry is exposing these opportunities for women, for young people, because let's be honest, we all want to leave a legacy. Whatever position we're moving out of, whatever dealership we leave behind, we want it to be maintained at the highest integrity that we left it at, right? And how are we going to do that? It's involving as many young people, as many women to make everything that we're leaving behind possible. And that's something that I noticed oftentimes in any department in a dealership is I talk to people all the time. I've talked to students at Northwood recently, and there's so many young people out in this world that have no idea about the opportunities that are in automotive. And I can say that because I was one of them. When I interviewed at a dealership, I was like, oh, I do not want to sell cars. I don't know how to work on a car. I don't even know how to change my oil. Like, it seemed like there was a bad stereotype about dealerships in this world. And I can say that for myself because I was scared to enter one. And now all I do day to day is advertise how many opportunities are in the automotive space, how many wonderful people work in the automotive space, and just how great of an industry it is. And I think that that's been my mission from day one, is to expose this industry for everything that it is and prove everybody wrong for what they think it's not. And I think the more we advertise that and highlight doing things like these pop-up events, find those hidden gems that have a voice that can tell their story within the automotive industry, that's going to inspire somebody out there that might have never heard of this opportunity in automotive. And I hope that we can do more of that as we go.
God, that is so awesome. Unbelievable. You know, I think about what we do at the Nilo company is, are we trying to have a plan for people, right? Do we have a plan for people to be successful? Chris talked about in the women of the great women of Nilo is all the different positions we have. I don't think people realize that we need highly trained IT people. Do we want to get paid? Yes, the answer is yes. We need a payroll. We need an HR department. There's so many different things for opportunities, not just for men, but also for women. I mean, women, can you imagine, should we have an office? Absolutely we should. So our goal is that let's open this up, and I feel that that is starting to go. And when you look at back when I started going to high schools and talking about the automotive industry, I was competing with the hairdresser at $13.50. And I was over here saying you can make $50 as a technician, and I didn't have a line, and she did. And it just tells us that the trades, I think, are finally coming back. And that's with all of you in this room, is that we can make a tremendously great living, have a great work-life balance, and really shine and make a difference for people. So I am super excited that the automotive industry is changing, finally for the better. And we're getting a lot more women in there, which we need because, men are so stupid. That's what my wife says. So it's really exciting. So next thing is I want to talk about is that when we look at the Fixed Ops Roundtable, what really is driving that is that it's our only avenue. And I know I tell you all the time, I can't thank both of you enough for giving this avenue for all of us, right? There's so many things that we've seen that we have done that because of Ted, that we have used that vendor or talked to that vendor, right? Because we did not know about that. And I think that the exposure and let the competition win. Talk about all those great vendors out there. Let them tell us their stories. Have some people, not just them talking because, that's just guys telling the same story. But when you have panelists on there about that product, I think that helps it. What do you think about them?
Yeah. We, at the Fixed Ops Roundtable, we don't want companies to come in and sell us anything. We want to make it educational. We want to make it interesting. So we work very hard with any company that appears. And you've had a couple companies that are here with us today. X-Time, great example. Cox Automotive is a big part of our events today. And they have educational segments. Skylar did one with us just recently, and then, of course, here at Nilo, but really on how to help the dealer and how to work with the dealerships. And everyone's looking for best practices, silver linings, right? So we want to highlight those and bring those out to help fixed ops directors, to help dealers. And we have now at the Fixed Ops Roundtable, not just service and parts managers, we have dealers, we have used car managers who are watching, we have F&I managers that are looking, for, ways to help with different things. I know Dennis has been involved as well. So a lot has come out of that.
It's interesting as we teeter. Please don't go too much salesy on us. Okay, you sure? Is that I think the power of one team is what we talked about today, right? it was really good to hear our technicians and our writers and our parts people talk about we're one team, we're one together, which was awesome in the culture. But I also think, to your point on that, is that what is the best thing for a used car department to do? It is to team up with the fixed ops department to make sure they get the recon done and fast. And what have we done lately, right? We have done an incredible job. You here have done an incredible job getting those cars in the shop and through the shop. And we probably have one of our best relationships with our used car managers because what? We're talking to each other. And we know that if I make great used cars, I get paid. And if we sell great used cars, we get paid. And if we make people happy, they trade them in. And then I get to do recon and everybody gets paid. Isn't that the greatest thing ever? I mean, think about it, right? Us working together on that. And that's another thing about when you brought it, Dennis, is that Dennis and I have done a couple segments a while ago about F&I and fixed. Are we married? 1, 2, 3? Yes, we are, right? The best thing we can ever sell somebody is a service contract. Does it make it easier for service riders? Absolutely. And then what happens with those great service contracts? We get a great trade-in because we're in the repeat and referral business. They trade that car in, and guess what? The car has been done. The car has been fixed. So really bringing those highlights together where sales and service need each other and where it's not a burden in the back. We are helping the store, the parts and service, and the sales department working together make a difference. And I think you're starting to showcase that.
I'd like you to ask, I'd like Cara to talk a little bit about an interview we just did last month. CDK is involved with our events, and a gentleman named Brian McDonald came to speak at our event. He's the president and CEO. It's interesting. We had, in September, I had a phone call from a gentleman named Chris Walsh, okay? He called me up and said, I'm with Reynolds and Reynolds, I'd like to speak at the Roundtable. And I said, what do you do? He said, I'm the president. I said, the president of what? Because I know you have a lot of divisions. He says, Ted, I'm the president of Reynolds and Reynolds. And we put Chris Walsh on the show. And then a similar thing with Brian McDonald. But when we interviewed him, I decided that it would be Cara and myself. We didn't find too many interviews with him online. And I'd like Cara to speak to that because I thought that was very interesting. By the way, he told us that CDK opens and closes 53% of all repair orders in North America.
Isn't that an insane number? I mean, it's the company we love to hate. I mean, I think it's a great company, but you know, we're always frustrated with it. But it was an actually really great interview because it almost looked like you surprised him when you were there. So tell us that story.
Yeah. After looking at just a handful of interviews that he had done, we were like, oh wow, this is gonna be a hard interview. You know what I mean? You know, I was thinking, I don't know what we're gonna talk about with this guy, and he's surely not gonna relate to me. And Ted's like, maybe you shouldn't do it with me. Maybe you should. Finally, Ted was like, oh, we'll just do it. And so we asked him the questions that he had proofed, and I started following up. And I was asking him about women, I was asking him about young people, social media, and he just lit up. And he's the president and CEO of CDK Global, and he had so much to say about scholarship opportunities for college students, recruiting opportunities for young students, how we could get more women in this business. And I was astonished that we just had to find the right topic to discuss with him to bring him out of his shell. And it just so happened to be in my wheelhouse. So I enjoyed the interview way more than we thought we were going to. And he had amazing things to say about this industry and how he feels like the future is so bright for all of us and the next generation to come.
God, that's a great story. You know, it's funny is because when he got on that, he was really tense. And all he could say is, well, we do 53% of all ROs. We're CDK. We charge a lot of money. And then all of a sudden, you just started opening him up and started talking. I thought it was just the best thing ever. It was good.
I thought, I'm probably going to get in trouble by his legal team because I'm going to start asking him questions that were not on this sheet. But I went for it anyways.
That is so awesome. So I think we got ready for dinner, but you know, I just want to say thank you, Ted and Cara, for bringing Fix Ops out. And I think all of us in this room, you know, owe you a great deed of gratitude. Thinking about back, 5 years, or even when I started my career, Fixed Ops was, not the place to be, or we didn't have that attention, and you're bringing the attention. And what's really nice is you're bringing the attention to dealers and the sales department to realize that Fixed Ops helps them also be successful.
Don't go sales.
I am not gonna. Don't worry, bro. Did you realize that Nilo started in Fixed? So the issue is that I think that you've done an incredible job showcasing something that needed to be showcased. So from my heart to all of us out there, all of our friends, we can't thank you enough, Ted and Cara, for all you do.
Tully, thank you so much. Let's give it up for Tully, everybody. Great job.
Fine. Well, this has been a lot of fun. So, I can't wait to do this again. So anyway, so here we go. Great to hear from you. Our next session we're going to talk about is tech videos. Really excited to get your insight. We have some examples, but really blowing up the video part is really going to be the next step. So